My name is Kelsey Visser, and on behalf of the Peace and Justice Institute at Valencia College and our sponsor, Orlando Health, I'd like to welcome you to our three-part community resilience series with Dr. Ken Ginsburg. So he's here again with us. We're so grateful to have him. Tonight's our final workshop in the series for educators, building on the strengths of all young people. So as educators at Valencia College, this workshop is extra special to us. So a special thank you to all the educators here tonight. Your steady supportive presence, even through the screen, means so much to our children. So thank you so much for being here. And we would like to specifically thank Orlando Health for generously sponsoring this three-part community series. And additionally, we'd like to thank all of the people in our Creating Resilient Community Network for being here tonight. Doesn't want to go over to the next slide. Here we go. Okay, so thank you also to all the individuals who donated individually tonight. Events and initiatives like this are possible because of our proud donor support. So if you'd like to invest in the future work of the Peace and Justice Institute and building a resilient community here in Central Florida, please consider showing your support by making a donation. And Lori's going to put the link in the chat box to do that. So we are going to hear a welcome from our sponsor, Orlando Health. So Donald Plumley from Orlando Health is a pediatric surgeon, and he actually spoke at our first Creating a Resilient Community conference in 2019. So he works at Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital for Children. He's certified by the American Board of Surgery with a specialty in pediatric surgery. He's a pediatric trauma medical director, as well as the chief quality officer at Orlando Health Arnold Palmer. Dr. Plumley also co-authored numerous medical publications, and he's a member of the Florida Association of Pediatric Surgeons, Florida Committee on Trauma, American Pediatric Surgical Association, chairman of the Greater Orlando Children's Miracle Network and Shepherd's Hope volunteer, and a fellow of the American College of Surgery. So I'm going to put on his welcome message that he created specifically for this event.
Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the Building on the Strengths of All Young People workshop today. I'm Dr. Don Plumley, a pediatric surgeon and the Pediatric Trauma Medical Director with Orlando Health Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children here in Orlando, Florida. At Orlando Health, it is our mission to improve the health and quality of life of the individuals and communities we serve. We do this by caring for and about our patients. Every day, our frontline team members provide quality, compassionate, and innovative care. As a pediatric trauma surgeon, much of my work focuses on the health and well-being of our young people. The most rewarding aspect of my job is knowing that the children I help now have the opportunity to grow, thrive, and live to their fullest potential. At Orlando Health Arnold Palmer, we've been serving the Central Florida children and families facing difficult medical and emotional challenges for over 30 years. This is not to mention the over 15,000 at-risk children and families we serve each year through our 6 specialized programs at our Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families. During today's workshop, you'll be introduced to the essentials of cultivating strength-based, trauma-sensitive, resilience-building interactions with children and youth. You will also be offered communication strategies that will aid in applying these principles in your work, along with examples of how to give control back to our young people from whom it has been taken away. I know that you share Orlando Health's commitment in making our community a more resilient, trauma-informed one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the workshop.
Okay, just a couple really quick technical reminders. You all are muted and are recording. So if you don't want to have your face seen in the long term, you can turn off your camera, but we really hope you'll keep it on. I think this connection is sort of all we have right now in this virtual space. So we do hope you'll keep your camera on. And at the very end, the reason why we did it in this format is so that you can turn your camera on, raise your hand with your little raise hand icon, and ask a question. So think of any questions that you have for Dr. Ginsburg as you hear him go through the presentation for educators. And he's going to be speaking until about 7:10, 7:15. Then we'll have the end for Q&A. And don't forget that we have the book raffle at the end. So Rachel's going to be giving away 5 of Dr. Ginsburg's books at the end of this. And you can always type your questions in the chat box, and all of you are muted right now. So we'll have to unmute you to ask your question. I want to share about the Creating a Resilient Community Network in case you want to get involved and don't know about it. So we're a group of over 200 members representing different organizations all over Central Florida, and we're collaborating across sectors and communities to transform our region into one of prevention, hope, healing, and resilience for all. So our next meeting is in January, and I hope you will join that. You can click on the little link in the chat box right now. I also will send out all these links later tomorrow, so don't worry about writing it all down and saving it. You'll get it one way or the other. Save the date for our next conference. So this is how we met Dr. Ginsburg initially, was in 2020 at our Creating a Resilient Community conference. And now we'll have our next one in 2021. So we hope you'll save the date for, it's a 2 half-day conference. We're gonna mind the Zoom fatigue and do it 2 half days. So April 20th and 21st, 2021. And registration will be up in the new year. Save the date for that. And if you'd like to join our book reading, we have a common read book club. So we started with The Deepest Well with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. Then we read Dr. Ginsburg, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, which we're giving away tonight. And then now we're moving on to Donna Jackson Nakazawa's book, Childhood Disrupted. So if you want to join the Common Read Book Club, there's a link for that. And we'll have some face-to-face virtual sessions as well to discuss the book in the new year leading up to the conference. And then lastly, we have ACES Connection Central Florida. It's a great space if you want to learn more about adverse childhood experiences, resilience, trauma-informed practices, find some research, share about events, post articles. So this is our personal Central Florida ACES Connection. So Lori's going to share the link for that as well. So I wanted to introduce you to a man who probably needs no introduction at this point because he's been with our community what feels like forever. And he was sharing tonight that he's still in his basement quarantining, and his commitment to this work and to his community and to our community is profound. So Dr. Ginsburg is the author of the AAP book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, 4th edition. He practices adolescent medicine at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and he's a professor of pediatrics at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. He directs health services at Covenant House, Pennsylvania, where he serves Philadelphia's youth enduring homelessness, and is also founding director of the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. His AAP multimedia toolkit, Reaching Teens, Strengths-Based Communication, Strengths-Based Trauma-Sensitive Resilience-Building Communication Strategies Rooted in Positive Youth Development, prepares professionals to be the adults that young people deserve in their lives. So we're so grateful for our time with him, and without any further interruption, Dr. Ginsburg. I'm going to give the screen back so you can have it.
Great. Thank you. Can you see the screen and hear me?
I can.
Wonderful. What a pleasure it is to be working again with this community. I've authentically enjoyed your leaders and the questions we've had in the smaller groups. And I can't wait till I get to meet you in person and we're not just seeing each other virtually. Today, you know, for those of you who have heard me before, some of this presentation or a lot of it is the same. What we're hoping is that there are educators who have really joined the conversation. And I've kind of oriented this talk for educators, but if you are an educator, you're going to be wearing your parent hat, your grandparent hat, your aunt and uncle hat for sure, right? And if you're coming in not as an educator, really what this talk is about, it's the same as the talk that I gave to the parents and to the community members, because what it's really about is adulting, right? However it is that we interface with young people, what they need is adults. And we all have different touch points in young people's lives, but what young people need is adults who are what I want to be and what I want to teach is how to become the kind of adult that young people need and deserve in their lives. And what I love about this community is that you're working with so many different kinds of touch points of adults in their lives. And when you have enough of them, then the young people will be able to travel seamlessly between systems and services and families and communities. And in all of those places, they'll be seen as they deserve to be seen. And that is our goal. The other point I really want to make is the emphasis of the word all here. You know, we always focus on, and I certainly do, focus on the young people who are deserving of our most focused attention, right? But one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to believe that when we really focus on those young people who have had the hardest lives, we might be taking something away from the other people. No. When we are trauma sensitive, when we are pro-development, all young people thrive. When we are anti-racist, all young people thrive, right? So to begin this talk, I always like to begin with this boy, who is the screensaver on my computer and the motivation behind what I do. Every task I begin with him. This is a young boy who just captured me once when I was looking on the internet, and he caught me by his smile, and he caught me by the crinkles between his eyes. You know, I have identical girls. You've heard me say that before, some of you, but only one of them has crinkles. And this kid grabs me. And I want you to begin on a spiritual level and this talk tonight and see him and see the joy, the potential, the possibility in this young man, so that we can all be on the same page. This young man is on a refugee boat. This is actually an Italian Navy boat because his boat is actually sunk, right? So I don't know what it is that had his family leave the shores of Northern Africa to try to get to Italy, but I do know that it had something to do with building him a better life. But what I absolutely definitively know is what his last hour looked like. And in his last hour, there was screaming and there was terror and there were people with cold and wet and thinking they were going to die. And yet, this young person looks okay. He actually looks joyous. This is the best picture I've ever seen of human resilience. Not only because it depicts a child who's resilient, but it tells you why. It is about the fact that the adults who surround the child lend him their calm, lend him their love, and show him how special he is. This is why the young person is okay. So we stand truly at an inflection point in human history in terms of how we relate to each other. See, we have always known that bad things ran in communities, bad things ran in families. And then because it was too hard for us to realize that therefore, but the grace of God, go I, so many people in society began blaming the victims. They began blaming the families, blaming the communities. And now where we are in 2020 is a completely different place, because if we pay attention to the science, we understand something. We understand that what happens to you in childhood affects your body, your brain, your behavior, and indeed even the genetics that you might pass along to the next generation. This is astounding. It's astounding to know this. And as a result, what we now also understand is that when the adults that surround the child are so stressed, so stretched, so needing to worry on basic survival issues that they don't have the resources or the means to protect and elevate the child, children suffer and we all suffer. So the worst thing in humanity is the othering that we have done by blaming the victims. The solution is to protect the children in an intergenerational way. Because if we only focus on the children, then we're not really solving the issue. We have to elevate and support the adults who surround the children, because we can never substitute for their love or for their caring. What we can do is give them the resources and the means to be able to support their children. So it is an intergenerational approach to child trauma and child well-being that will make us all move into the future. But let's go back for a minute. Childhood trauma affects the body, the brain, behavior, and genetics. That's a terribly scary slide. But that's not why we're here. We're here because of this slide, because there is an equally important body of research, a robust body of research that we should be screaming from the rooftops. And what it says is that all of those bad things may be true, but when children are surrounded by loving adults around them, they are buffered from the worst effects of poverty and oppression and all of the other isms that affect the child, including childhood trauma. So the power of loving adults is profound. So what we want to talk about tonight is really an integrated model that prepare adults to be the kind of people young people need and deserve in their lives. And it's going to have to take a bunch of what we've known for the last 60 years. It's got to take the best in positive youth development because we have to elevate youth. We have to hold them to very high expectations. It's going to take the best of what we know from building resilience because we can't bubble wrap our kids. What we can do is instill in them the thought processes and the skill sets to be able to rebound even when life is tough. And we've got to be trauma sensitive. And I want you to notice the word sensitive. I'm not using the word trauma informed. That is deeply thoughtful and intentional. Because frankly, I don't care what you know. I care what you do. And when you're only informed, you run the risk of actually becoming overly empathetic in a way that undermines the child. Do I want you to be empathetic? Absolutely. Do I want you to change your lens from what's wrong with you to something happened to you? Absolutely. But what I never want you to do is to say that because someone has suffered, I will lower my standards and expectations on them. Because when you do that, you become one more chain in the link of oppression. And you would never do that if you're rooted in positive development and in the effort to build resilience. That's the difference between being informed and being sensitive. Being sensitive is about the actions that you take. At the root of all these models, it's the same thing. It's the primacy and the power of human relationships, both to build strong, successful youth and to heal those who've endured hardships. We seek the sweet spot. In this paragraph, you will see all of the models and a call to restorative rather than punitive practices without using a word of jargon. What we know is the young people need safe, secure, and sustained relationships to thrive. We even know that such relationships can allow them to heal from hard past. But at the same time, we have to guide them so they're accountable to being their best selves. And when we do that, they have to know that our high expectations are rooted in our caring. Because ideally, our efforts at accountability have to enhance rather than disrupt our protective relationship. Safe, secure, and sustained. Who are the people who are most important? Undoubtedly, it's parents. After that, it is undoubtedly educators. So I really want, for those of you who are here tonight as educators, for you to understand the absolutely pivotal role you have in the lives of young people. Let's go back to this paragraph. Let's look at me. I'm a doctor. Do I create safety in my office? I do. Security? I hope so. Sustained? No. If I have a really good relationship with someone, I might see them once a month. At Covenant House, I might see them once a week. Teachers, you can see them every day. You see them during their waking hours. You might see them for more hours than their parents see them, right? And what about accountability? If I hold people accountable as a doctor, it's unethical. Right? I have to roll with the punches and stick with you. You also have to stick with them, but it's your job to hold people accountable to being their best selves. Your entire profession is based on teaching people to be their best selves, to elevate their intellect, to build their skills. There is nobody that is more important in this model than educators. But at the same time, I'm smart enough to know that it can be really intimidating to be an educator now, maybe more than ever, right? Because you're literally going into people's homes right now. And so what happens is people sometimes become very afraid. They're like, are you teaching me, Dr. Ken, to be a counselor? No, I'm not. I am teaching you how to make it so that your kids will be ready to learn. And hopefully, if we dive in deeper beyond this call, right? But if you look at the materials I've produced, you're going to learn how to recognize a problem and how to take your role, which is that as a loving, caring adult who expresses concern, you get the kid to the next level, whether it's to the counselor, whether it's the psychiatrist, whether it's to the community-based program, but you get them to the next level without shame or stigma. And that's about learning the language of resilience. That's about learning the language of what you deserve rather than what you need. And it's learning the language of, I continue to care for you, but I can't give you everything you deserve right now, which is why I'm going to guide you to the next steps. right? You can stay in your lane and still understand that you are the most important people in the lives of kids. So where can the greatest progress be made with adolescents? All adolescents, but especially those with the hardest lives. What you have to understand is what is actually happening when it comes to behavior, because it is largely brain-based, right? And what is happening is that you have pathways in your brain that make you experience something, and to have a shortcut, you go right to the behavior without having to do a lot of thinking, right? And that's neural pathways. And you begin creating neural pathways when you're born. So when you're born, you make a noise and you cry. And when you cry, your mother may understand that you need either nurturance or nourishment, and she takes out a breast. And when she does, and that happens over and over again in a repeated way, you have a brain pathway that says, the world is secure, I have a need, I serve, and I get a response. I have a need, the world is predictable, people take care of me. And that is the way you will go through the rest of your life. But suppose your mother is so stressed or has so many issues that she needs to deal with that she is unable to hear your gurgle. What do then? You cry. And if that happens over and over again, and the only way you get the attention you need and deserve is to cry, then don't be surprised when your brain pathways lead you to a place of emotionality very quickly. But suppose your mother still can't hear your cries. Then what do you do next? You scream. And when that happens over and over again, you learn that the world is not safe or predictable. You do not get the nourishment and nurturance you need unless you scream. And suppose you still don't get what you need. Then what do? You give up, because you can't open the refrigerator. So you go and you begin sucking on your hands, and you withdraw and begin entertaining yourself, and you see yourself as just doing whatever it takes to survive and to withdraw from your emotions and your biologic feelings of hunger. And when that happens over and over again, your brain pathways will be laid down, and you will see the world as not only unpredictable, but you'll see yourself as having no control over your environment. Now you go through childhood, and let's say that you were hurt in childhood or abused. Then you learn that the only way that you can prevent the abuse is to act with rage, to kick, to be reactive, and to be hypervigilant at all times, wondering when danger was going to come. And if that happens repeatedly, your brain pathways will be set down so that your danger signals will be very sharpened. You will see danger, maybe that other people don't even see, and you will be very reactive to push people away when you sense danger. So we understand this. We also understand something else, which is that adolescence is a time of profound brain development and human plasticity, meaning that those brain pathways can change. Even if they were laid down throughout childhood, they can change during adolescence. So what do? We do the opposite of what kids have learned is what their life looks like. If a kid has learned that their needs are not met, we meet them in advance. We don't make them cry or scream for nurturance or for love. We give it to them in advance. When a kid has learned that their emotions are ignored, we don't wait for them to cry or scream. We elevate and we celebrate their emotions in advance. We make them feel so safe so that that part of their brain that is hypervigilant doesn't need to fire. And when that happens over and over again, kids begin to see the world differently than they did before. And that is astounding, and that is spiritual, and that is real. So, and let me tell you what you're going to get in case I forget to say this later. Remember those kids who have developed their brains so that they're hypervigilant and see danger that other people don't see, right? Those kids have what I call a protector's brain. It's a part of their brain. It's actually called the amygdala. It's behind the nose. It's the size of about a walnut. And that part of their brain is highly developed. And they're always scanning for danger. And they're always scanning for people who will not treat them well. But you know what? When they are treated well and when they know they're safe, their amygdala doesn't have to scan for the environment anymore. It doesn't have to scan for danger, but it remains brilliant. It remains highly developed. And you know what else the amygdala is for? It's the root of human compassion and empathy. And that is why people have had the hardest lives when treated well are often the most compassionate and loving human beings on earth. And that's why I do the work that I do, because I work with the best people on the planet. Let's talk about youth development very, very quickly. How are we going to define success for all young people? The first thing we have to do is we have to stop looking at the child. If you're a third grade teacher, stop looking at the 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds, stop, and begin looking at the 35-year-olds you're developing. Because when you begin imagining the 35-year-olds you're developing, then what happens is everything begins to change. Because suddenly you're not focusing only on whether they're happy today and how they're doing in school. And instead what happens is you begin focusing and seeing the 35-year-old and you're questioning, is this person compassionate? Is this person caring? Is this the kind of person who will choose to not avert their eyes to human tragedy? Does this person hardworking? Do they have tenacity, to grit, stick-to-itiveness? Are they creative, right? Are they able to come up with ideas that other people can't come up with because they are collaborative and they're able to listen to other ideas? They know, and they know that all they know is red, but that when they listen to someone else who can explain blue to them, then they understand that the answer might in fact be purple. Right? Are they people who honor diversity? And that means really taking this moment in time and choosing to change, throwing in the wastebasket tokenism. What does my generation do when we think about diversity? We count complexions, we count genders, we count sexualities. And if there are enough people present in the room, we say we've achieved diversity. That was never diversity. That was tokenism. Diversity has to be matched with the words equity and inclusion, because inclusion means authentic shared power and learning the wisdom from the people around you. If our kids can become the 35-year-olds who get that, we will have changed the world. And what else do we need our kids to be? Resilient. Because as much as we wish we could wrap them in downy quilts, it's just not possible. So what is our job in development? Our job is to create enriching and protective environments. Let me tell you what we know about adolescents. Adolescents are super learners. There will not be another time in development other than the years of 0 to 3 where you just want to learn and you will absorb that knowledge. Adolescents are also developing their social selves. Their brains are literally wired to go when they're around their friends. This is ultimately how you get grandchildren, right? But it sometimes can be maddening, but they are really good at being social. The other thing is adolescents as super learners, their job is to experiment. In fact, experimentation is a necessity, right? Because where does knowledge happen? New knowledge, it's at the edges of what you already know. How do you get there? You push the edges, you expand the boundaries, and you do that through our experimentation. It's our job to create enriching, exciting, safe opportunities for growth and to protect them from harm. So that picture, this is the puzzle of adolescence. It's called, who am I? What is our job as educators, as parents, and as just adults? We have to understand why super learners push the edges. And what do we need to do? Create clear boundaries, because their brains are always going to push to the edge. So we have to be really clear, you're not going there. And when you do, they actually love it, because then they know what they can push against. But you know what else you need to do? Because their brain is designed to experiment and designed to push and designed to learn, those edges that you've set, make them amazing. Create golden opportunities at those edges, because if you make school exciting, exhilarating, if you make English class not about memorization, but about nuance and understanding and stretching your mind in ways you've never imagined, then kids will be satisfied and be thrilled with English class. They will be thrilled with going out for the school play in the edges. They will be thrilled with sports, and they will not extend into territory of risk. Hear what I'm saying, because I am making a very explicit statement here. Risk is a problem of adults. It is when adults do not create the clear boundaries and the golden opportunities that kids go into risky territory. Kids naturally experiment, but they don't want risk any more than we want them to get there. It's for us to do our job. How do we talk to kids? We know how to talk to kids in a way that it's going to bring out the very best of them. You know, the world generally knows that there's two parts of the brain that are in decisions and in emotions. There's that amygdala I talked about, that walnut-sized thing back here that's emotions. And then there's the thinking part of your brain, which is your cerebral cortex. Well, all of the people who like to make cartoons about teenagers always talk about like no engines, no brakes, it's all amygdala. You can't talk any sense into kids. This is absolutely, positively, factually untrue. Here is what is true. What is true is that the amygdala is developing extremely well. It's brilliant. That's why kids are so emotional and so empathetic. But this part of the brain might lag a little bit behind, but it is also developing very well. It's all about how we communicate with the kid. Which part of their brain do we activate? And are we speaking in what's called hot communication tones or cold communication? When we are condescending, when we are angry, when we are belittling, then what happens is we're speaking to a kid's amygdala. If the kid's amygdala is already brilliant, it vibrates and it hijacks the thinking process. But when we are calm and when we are respectful and when we know how to communicate information by avoiding complexity, because if we're going to give the lecture, A goes to B, which goes to C, which could lead to D, listen to me, young man, when I'm talking to you. If we're going to talk in that way, not only is that angry and condescending that is going to stimulate the amygdala, it also is presented in a mathematical cadence that looks like this equation. It's just too complicated. A goes to B, which goes to C. There are all sorts of intervening variables. Too much. It makes kids feel stupid. And when they feel stupid, you are speaking to their amygdala. If, on the other hand, we learn how to honor the intelligence that young people do have and just deliver information in bite-sized pieces so that they get it, got it, own it, learned it, can use it the next day, then kids, by the time they're about 14 years old, have the same decision-making capability as adults do. It's all about whether adults know how to teach and talk to kids. So it's about going from this mathematical equation to, you know, A goes to B, and I want to make sure that I don't have to worry about B happening to you. What are your thoughts and feelings about this? Resilience. That was Youth Development 101. Resilience is about being able to overcome adversity. It's about the capacity to bounce back. It is absolutely about surviving difficult times. And that's what most people think of it as. But it's more than that, guys. It's absolutely also about thriving in the best of times. If you put into place the tools and the skill sets to be able to survive difficult times, you will absolutely thrive in the best of times, which is where we're going in a moment. Resilience is a mindset. It's about how you think. To understand this, you have to understand that we are all designed to survive this guy, a tiger attack. And if you don't believe me, think about what happens if you see a tiger. So you're sitting down, you see a tiger, what do you need to do? You need to jump. So where do you need the blood? You need your butt, which is your jumping muscle, and your legs, which are your running muscles, right? And how do you know that the blood is shifting there? Because the first feeling you have when you're stressed is butterflies, right? It's the first thing you feel. That is literally the blood leaving your belly to go to your butt so you can jump. Seriously, how cool is that? Right? Then your heart beats fast, you can pump the blood. You sweat so you can cool off while you're running. You breathe fast so you can oxygenate that blood. Your pupils get big so you can run in the dark, even if you have to jump over a lot. But most importantly, you can't think clearly. And you can't think clearly because you're not supposed to say to the tiger, hey, I'd like to work this out with you. And you can't feel fully. Why? Because you're not supposed to say to the tiger, I want to understand why you want to eat me. So in times of maximal stress, you can't think, plan, make decisions, or feel and connect, which means that at its core, resilience is about knowing when something's really a tiger, because if it is, you're not supposed to be doing those things, versus when it only feels like a tiger. And when it feels like a tiger, but it's not really a tiger, you are undermining your resilience because you aren't going to be able to think or plan. In fact, though, seeing a tiger is not the scariest thing that humanity has to deal with. The scariest thing that humanity has to deal with is uncertainty. Look at this picture. This is like the coolest picture you've ever seen. See it? The tiger's right there in the middle. This is the scariest thing that humanity has to deal with, right? The uncertainty. The tiger could be there, it could be there, it could be anywhere. That is literally what defines anxiety, right? So let's now, because this is the Peace and Justice Institute, let's now get back into some of these equity and racial issues and look at what science would tell us. Too many people believe that when we speak about racism, we are only speaking about the ferocious tigers, hatred that you see in front of you. And then they say, I have no hate in my heart. There's no hate in this community. But in fact, what is the reality of racism? While hatred certainly does exist, the reality is that there are structural forces and implicit biases that are hidden in plain sight and that people need to navigate, but they never can see directly. And what we know about the science and biology of stress is that the hormone that is elevated when you see a tiger is adrenaline. Adrenaline is not the hormone that causes the damage from trauma. It is cortisol, which is the hormone that says I need to be vigilant at all times. I need to be able to jump. I'm not able to interpret my environment, so I need to always have high blood pressure so I can jump and react. Just understanding this model is one way of helping people understand the profound damage of implicit biases and structural forces that are hidden. What is the bottom line of building resilience? The bottom line of building resilience is that young people are more resilient when the important adults in their lives believe in them without condition and hold them to high expectations. What is without condition? I'm not saying you should say to your students, it's okay to do drugs, kids. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying it's okay if you fall asleep in my class and don't pay any attention, which, by the way, if they're falling asleep, it might be for very good reasons, but that's another subject, right? That is related. It might be that they're staying up all night because of things that are hard at home. But with that said, you're allowed to hold kids to high standards. What unconditionality means is I'm not going anywhere. I'm standing by you. And high expectations, that is not about grades, guys. That is about effort. But what it's really about is young people being known in their best light. And we're going to be talking about this more. There's nothing more protective in a human being's life than to be seen as they deserve to be seen, not based on a behavior, a label, or a grade. And when you know someone in the context of all of their goodness, all that is good and right in them, you hold them to those expectations. Now let's talk about building resilience in this age of uncertainty. I'm going to whip through this, but I've written quite a bit about this, and I'm pretty sure you guys have a chapter that you can disseminate again that I've written about this. I just want to point out at a very high level that the strategies that we're talking about are about adulting, whether you're a parent or whether you're a kid. This moment in time, 2020, which is a year of nothing but uncertainty, is an opportunity for young people to build skill sets around resilience and for you to do it. And there's no way that the kids in your classroom are going to learn better from you than by learning these skill sets that you are using in your home or yourself. Coronavirus, let's talk about 2020. There's no doubt in my mind that this time is going to leave a generational mark on young people. This is going to define them. And the question is, how are we going to shape the impact that it leaves? Similarly, issues around justice and equity. This is a time that is an awakening for many people in the country. But what we have to be deeply sensitive about is that this is not an awakening for too many people. For people of color, this is not an awakening, right? This is an affirmation of reality, and they're looking around and going, now you see it, right? So that when we do teaching and explanations about it, we need to be sensitive about the fact that we're not all in the same place in terms of our awareness. But the biggest question is, how can we raise a generation of future adults who are going to build us a better world? With that said, every earned emotion creates an opportunity for building resilience. The word earned is very important there, because we've got to see that everyone's emotions are valid. See, young people build resilience through practice and observing. And taking care of yourself is a strategic act of good parenting, of good adulting. And modeling how you work through complexity is the way to build the thinkers and problem solvers moving us forward. So let's look at some emotions. And what is the resilience lesson that the kids are going to learn from us? We all feel like we've been failing, right? We're doing more stuff than we've ever done, and we're not doing it very well. And think of it, I always think of it as like a juggler. You know, you can juggle 3 balls, someone hands you a 4th, you're probably going to drop them, but with lots of practice, you can do 4, rarely maybe 5. But right now, what is happening is people are just throwing extra balls at you while you're juggling. And what that means is that you're dropping some of them. Guys, this is an amazing opportunity, because there's 2 directions for you to look. Look up and look down. Look up at the balls that are still in the air. And what that is going to tell you is what your priorities are. That is going to tell you what matters to you. I'll bet you anything that the balls that are in the air are about human connection, family connection, health. And then you're going to look at the balls on the ground. This is an opportunity for you to choose to leave some of them down there moving forward, because this is a forced prioritization. And some of the things that we thought mattered, we now understand don't matter. And this is a moment for us to reboot. But everybody, with that said, feels like they're failing. What is the resilience lesson? Learning self-forgiveness. Perfection was never an option. Now understand that human beings get stretched too thin, and you learn to prioritize. The kids are frustrated, and so am I. Well, you know what? We want our kids to be those 35-year-olds who are empathetic. How do you learn empathy? You don't learn empathy by an adult saying to you, you should love your neighbor. It's not the way you learn empathy. You learn empathy by being loved, by being the neighbor, right? And so here what's happening is that we have been judging the kids. You know, what are they so stressed about? We're the ones who have to work and do this, and all we're asking them to do is stay home. Well, you know what? For me to stay home, Kelsey shared with you that I'm like living in my basement. That's fine. I'm developed. I have kids already, right? It's fine. I can live through it. Do you understand that for the adolescent brain to tell them to separate from their friends is literally flying in the face of development? The other thing you need to know is that the adolescent's job is to stretch those limits, to get to a certain set of boundaries and then push further. That is what developing autonomy and independence is. That means that us telling them to sit put and to take away the freedoms they have is devastating, and it's developmentally inappropriate. And when we look at them with empathy and understand why this is so hard for them, then that is where they're going to learn to empathize with other people. I don't know how to handle how I feel, right? There's so many emotions swirling. Well, you know what? This is a time to acknowledge these emotions, to elevate them, to celebrate them, and to talk about the strength in vulnerability. That in fact, vulnerability is equated with strength. God, that's going to be different than it was for me growing up in 1979. This is an opportunity where everybody is feeling and where we can celebrate that feeling. People need a timeout. The adults, you need a timeout. I don't know how teachers are doing it. I don't know how you're doing it with these hybrid or virtual models. Everybody needs a timeout. And that is what enables you to be a calming presence for others. So let's talk about being calm amidst a chaotic reality. What we're really talking about is co-regulation. The best way to define co-regulation to me is imagining you're on a plane and there's turbulence, right? What do? Do you look at the guy sitting next to you? No, because his knuckles are white and he's terrified. What do? You look at this flight attendant. And if they're still serving snack mix, you're cool. That's co-regulation. It's borrowing their emotions or lending their emotions. That's what you do with young people, is you lend your emotions. And then when you get them co-regulated, particularly kids who've had the hardest lives, when you make them feel safe, that is when they can begin to become self-regulated. Who do we want to be? If you've got a 3-year-old, you have a 3-year-old grandchild or child, or maybe you're a pre-K teacher, look like this guy. Look like the duck that's floating on the water. Just completely calm. Let that kid know everything's fine. There's no reason to be stressed out because, my God, that adult over there is just chill, right? But if you've got a thinking kid who's 8 or 9 or certainly a teenager, and you look like this adult amidst chaos, then you're going to look like a robot. And you're missing the opportunity to teach them what they need to learn. Look like this guy. You're still floating on the surface, but the only reason you're getting anywhere is because your little feet are paddling like crazy. This is your opportunity to talk about what you do, about how intentional it is that you are able to stay stable, and what it is that you do to be that way. Next, my mind feels out of control. What an important lesson it is to learn that the best way to calm the mind is through the body. Learn to exercise, learn to relax, learn to meditate, eat well, sleep well. That is the only way your mind will become stable. I keep thinking about the worst case scenario. Exactly. I hope now you understand the science of why you do, right? The tiger is not the scariest thing to humanity. It is the tiger in the brush that you're not sure is there. That is the scariest thing to humanity. Uncertainty is the scariest thing to humanity. What does that mean? It means that when we can't really see the tiger, we imagine it. We make it real. And that is what catastrophic thinking is. It's going to your very worst case scenario so that you can imagine something rather than living with the uncertainty that drives that drives anxiety. Because on some level, anger and fear is easier than anxiety. So we have catastrophic thinking. The problem is that doesn't make you more resilient, because the secret to resilience is handling the problem that's in front of you, right? And so if you create a tiger that's not really there, you can't fix it. So it is a major resilience lesson to learn to stay present and to live in reality. I feel helpless. Yup, we all do. That's why you figure out what you can do. Stop looking at problems as mountains and begin looking at the hills that build the mountains, and figure out which hill you can conquer. I can't do everything. That's right. Look at the balls that have dropped on the ground and let go. You might actually be able to move forward as a result. Feeling disappointed, absolutely. What is our job? It's to find joy in everyday life, even during the worst of times. And how do you do that? By maintaining purpose. And what's the best way to maintain purpose? By giving to other human beings. Because when you give to other human beings, you very quickly and easily learn that it feels good to give. When you learn that it feels good to give, that is one of the biggest resilience inoculations you could receive. Because when you know how good it feels to give, it means that when you need to receive, you can do so without shame or stigma. Because you're not thinking the other person's pitying you. You're now understanding they feel good to give. I had so many plans that aren't working out. Exactly. This is the whole point. When you can't change things, adapt. That's another definition of resilience. Will things ever be the same? You know, people ask me this question all the time, you know, even when I'm walking in my neighborhood, because they know like I'm the resilience guy. And you know what they want me to do? They want me to like reassure them. They want me to pat them on their head and say, everything's going to be fine. Kids are resilient. You'll be resilient. Communities are resilient. Our nation is resilient. That's what they want. I know that that's what they want because their eyes are looking at me and begging for that answer. And my answer instead is, I hope not. Because you know what? There's a lot of things that were wrong, and I think they can be better. I really do. I think this is an amazing opportunity to learn to protect the vulnerable. I think this is an amazing opportunity to get to a society that is healthy. What do healthy societies do? They celebrate young people and they venerate old people, right? We haven't been like that. We haven't been like that. This is the generation that's going to hug their grandparents and understand it has meaning. This is the generation that's going to go to school and celebrate learning next to people, right? We can be so much better also when we fight for equity and for justice. So there's no question that this time is going to leave a generational mark on young people, right? But what is that mark? I think that the commonality of everything that's going on is distancing, whether it's the divisiveness that comes out of some of our political leaders, whether it is the division that happens because we have to be distanced from our family and friends. What happens is we're being divided and separated exactly when we want to be drawing nearer. So I believe that this can be the generation that understands that more than anything, relationships are what strengthen human beings. And if this generation can learn that any one of us can be vulnerable, like a stick in the wind, fragile, breakable, any one of us. So I'm not telling you not to be vulnerable. I'm telling you that vulnerability is an act of strength. But if this generation learns that all you need to do is join with another person and you're less breakable and bendable, join with a group and you're immovable. If this generation can learn how to be a bundle of sticks and we can help them to get there, it will be astounding. And the truth is that if adults just got out of the way, I believe that this is the lesson this generation would learn, right? Because they will understand how meaningful it is to be with other people. The problem is we're not getting out of the way and we're doing the exact opposite. During a time where humanity should be learning this lesson, the global conversations are continuing to be about divisiveness instead of coming together. What a squandering of an opportunity to build a better world. Let's tie it together. For those of you who know me, you met me when I gave you a 6-hour talk, right? And when I come to your community, God willing, sometime in the future, I might spend days there training the community. I give up to, Rachel likes that idea. I give up to 5-day training. So let me try to put all of this in 15 more minutes, right? The essence of love, right? So first, let's talk about the key principles of trauma-sensitive practices. I'm going to give you 4 principles. The first is knowing what's about you and what's not about you. You could look at that principle and you could think that this is a boundary, that is a wall that divides us. It's the opposite. Because what happens is when you understand that trauma makes people act out, and sometimes those daggers, that reactivity that is flying at you is the only way they learn to survive. It's not about you at all. And when you become defensive because you think the daggers or the reactivity is about you, then what you're going to do is shut them down, which is the opposite of what they need. They need to be heard. And you need to understand that it wasn't about you in the first place. And then you don't need to shut them down. You can listen. And that is the first step of being loving. Next is changing your lens from what's wrong with you to understanding that something happened to that person. Next, and this is where we're moving, is seeing people as they deserve to be seen, not based on labels they've received, nor in behaviors that they've displayed. And the last one is giving control back to people from whom control has been taken away, right? Because at its core, trauma is about losing the integrity of even sometimes of your own body, but of your choices and whatnot. And when we are adults top down telling kids what to do, not only are we not being trauma sensitive, we're also not being pro-development. But when we figure out how to make it so that kids can make choices, that we see them as the experts in their own lives, then they will gain control back, which is deeply trauma sensitive. Next, let's talk about behavioral change. And behavioral change is anything that moves people in a positive or a negative way. But if you ask a young person what they want from people more than anything else, including teachers or all sorts of adults, they say, I want to know that they have their back. So for those of you who are listening to me for 90 minutes, the next 1 minute, if you can learn this tidbit and walk away from it, you will end up saving a life at some point, because adults get this wrong. See, behavioral change is about forward and backward movement. People move a few steps forward, a few steps back, a few steps forward. I'm a strengths-based guy, right? I have textbooks on strength-based communication, and people think that that's about praise. Strength-based communication is not it's not about praise. In fact, praise alone can backfire, right? So let's imagine now that a young person comes to me and they say, hey, Dr. Ken, I got straight A's in school. The person who thinks strength-based communication is about praise is going to say, I'm so proud of you. You're so smart. And I'm so proud of you for getting A's. And if I give that kid affirmation, and particularly if he doesn't get enough of it at home, you know what? When he gets A's again, I'm the guy he's coming to. Straight to me, right? 6 months later, next quarter or semester, telling me again. But now what happens when his dad dies and his mom becomes depressed and he suddenly becomes the father of the house? And he's only getting 4 hours of sleep a night because he's bathing the kids. He's doing their homework. He's waking up and then he's doing his homework. He's waking up to make them breakfast. Then he's falling asleep in class. And then the teacher says, why are you even here if you're falling asleep? And now he's not getting C's. He's not getting A's anymore. Now he's getting C's and D's. Will I know? I will not know, because I had his front, not his back. My relationship was based on praise of what he did. And he loved that praise. And he doesn't want to disappoint me. All you need to do is change what you praise. And change from, I'm so pleased that you're getting straight A's, to, thank you for always telling me what's going on in your life. That makes me proud. I love being here for you. I love knowing what's going on. Just say that. And then when the kid really needs you to have his back, he's coming to you, because what your relationship was based on was not what he was achieving, but that he was coming to you. That alone is the single most important thing I believe I teach teachers, because you will be there for kids if they think you're not only proud of them when they achieve in a traditional educational way. See, keeping going with behavioral change, confidence is what gets progress started, and shame and demoralization paralyzes action. So what do we need to do? We need to build people's confidence by finding and elevating the competencies in their life. So this is the field of someone's life. This kid's doing drugs, this kid's selling drugs, this kid wants to become pregnant. Every kid in the world navigates adults who then just wag their finger and tell them what to do. This is what's wrong with you. This is why you're making a mistake. That has never changed a single kid. What does change young people is when we see all that is good and right in them. We look for their behavioral operational strengths. So let's take that kid who's doing drugs. We can tell him that smoking marijuana will make him grow breast. It's a factually true statement, but it's going to drive him to more drug use. Because why was he using in the first place? Because he's deeply sensitive and stressed, and he was trying to shut himself down. Why don't we work there? Why don't we talk to him the way he deserves to be seen? You know, man, it feels hard to have as many emotions as you have, to be as deep a thinker and as full and rich a feeler. But you know what? People like you become the best fathers and lovers and colleagues and bosses. You have it. Pause, deep breath. But you're shutting yourself down with the weed. Because yeah, it makes you not think for a moment, but it's also going to take away your motivation. God forbid a man like you would lose your motivation. You have so much to bring to the world. The point being, you're listening for all that is good and right. So look, allow yourself to fall in love with the kids, right? What is it about them that makes you on their team? Is it their resilience? Is it their compassion? Is it their insight? What's wonderful about this kid? And when you know that, that's all you need to do to get the kid to the next step, right? Because what you do is you talk about why you love them. By the way, don't use the word love, because that can be creepy and misunderstood in English. Rather, you express what you know is good and right about them. Heart, this is what I feel when I'm with you. Pause, deep breath. Belly, but I'm feeling worried about you because some of what you're doing right now is going to get in the way of your success. Head, I'd like to come up with a plan with you. Hands, I'd like to accompany you in your next step of your journey. This is how you're a teacher without crossing boundaries or going into the other lane. I care about you because I see you. Because I care about you, I'm worried about you. I'd like to come up with a plan with you, but I may not be the best person to get you all the way there. Let me get you to the counselor. Heart, I care. Belly, I feel. Head, I plan with you. Hands, I take you to the next step. What is love? Love is seeing someone as they deserve to be seen, as they really are, not through the lens of the behaviors they sometimes need to display, nor the labels they may have received, just seeing people as they are. That is the secret to counseling from a non-counselor. And that is the secret to behavioral change. We talked early on about secure and sustained relationships. You know, you are teachers, which means you have more sustained relationships than I will ever have. But the truth is that in most cases, you have a year with a young person. And let's say you've had an amazing experience with this kid. Have you planted seeds? Gosh, yes. But the problem is that if a kid holds you fully responsible for their success, then what they're going to do is they're going to fail before they leave your classroom because they're going to be terrified of losing you. What we need to do when we see kids as they deserve to be seen is we need to leave them with their ruby slippers, meaning that it is what is good about them that they carry with you that you have seen. You've got to give them the credit, even when a kid says you're the best teacher I've ever had. Then you inside, you can be doing a happy dance and you can tell your spouse or your lover how good you feel in the moment. But what you need to do as the kid is like, are you kidding me? Have you ever looked at you? Right? I just saw you because you chose to share with me who you are. Please let the 10th grade teachers know who you are too, right? Let them leave with the mirror. Last big topic is giving young people control over their decisions. So there are so many things I could say about this. I could spend hours on this subject alone. But I want to talk about stress management and resilience. It's really about learning to cope in a positive way with life's inevitable stressors. And we might do our greatest good by equipping young people with a wide range of coping strategies. Because people can choose positive coping strategies, gain control. See, here's the model. Stress is incredibly uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable, you got to do something about it. Doing something about it is called coping. There are positive ways of coping, and there are negative ways of coping. The negative ways of coping work great. They're negative because they are quick, easy fixes that can be addictive and do harm for you. The positive coping strategies also work well, but they don't lead to negative outcomes. They lead to relief. Where do kids learn this? From parents, in communities, and I believe incorporated throughout school curriculum. It's not an extra subject, coping. It's you choose to incorporate into your lessons how this makes people release emotions, organize emotions, understand feelings, why physical education helps you manage with stress. You know, in kindergarten, you can teach a young person that blowing bubbles helps them to relax. You don't have to teach them meditation, teach them to blow bubbles and how that feels. This can be incorporated throughout the curriculum. Your goal is to raise kids with so many positive coping strategies, such a wide array of opportunities that the path of least resistance is there. But let me say this before we talk about coping in depth. The worst thing is not to be stressed. The worst thing is to be numb. Let me talk about what happens to people. Emotions come in all sorts of and experiences in all sorts of different directions. You wish you could process them. You really do, but you can't. For you as teachers, you're exposed to the most passionate themes of human existence on a daily basis. It's exhausting. You wish you could process and share your feelings and experiences with everybody. You have to take care of your own kids and be a lover and enjoy your own life. So things keep coming at you. And they keep coming. And what do we do to keep ourselves sane? We put a box around these feelings. We tuck it away. And we think we'll deal with it later, but you don't. And things keep coming at you. And they keep coming and coming. So what do? The only way to stay sane is to build thicker walls of that container until it becomes what I call a leaden box. Why lead? Because lead is too heavy to lift. You can't see through it, and it's toxic. And when your feelings are trapped inside of a leaden box, then what happens? Someone opens up your lid, and what pours out is rage. What is the solution? The solution is to have a healthy container, to go through a process of emotional intelligence where you organize your thoughts and feelings. It's a Tupperware box. You know what's inside, you can see it, but it don't stink. You understand each of these things are your experiences. I am emotionally intelligent, not when I've solved all my problems, but when I can begin to control my problems by naming them. That's the first step, and understanding them. Then what do? I open up the lid at a time of my choosing. I take one of those issues and I let it out in any way that expresses the feeling. I cried it out, I laughed it out, I prayed it out, I talked it out, I wrote it out, I slammed it out, I drew it out. Whatever it is, you release your emotion and then you close the lid, but there's less inside. This is the kind of emotional, loving way of dealing with problems that we want to do ourselves to prevent professional burnout and that we want to teach our kids to do. I want to bring you for a moment to the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. This is my center. I'm going to give you a resource that is completely free. It is a resource that you can link to and that you can use in your own young people's lives, or that you can link parents to. And I'm going to let you be able to sign up again for free. You'll never be asked for money in a moment, so get ready. But this is the website. The website is the most comprehensive parenting website that exists, I promise you. It also is strength-based. Most parenting information is all about saying to yourself, how do I talk to my kid? And you Google, and the answer is how to survive. This is a multicultural site with many diverse authors that talk about the strength of relationships between families and kids. But the reason I'm showing it to you now is for two reasons. I want to bring your attention to 2 points. Under supporting emotional health, there is an article that if you want to refer your families to for seeking professional help, there's a language of resilience. You don't want to just tell people what they need. You want to tell people what they deserve. And you want to help young people understand how and why seeking professional help is going to do them good, right? Let them know that treatment can work. Show them that time invested is going to pay off. Let them know that seeking treatment is an act of strength. You can see this now, right? Kelsey, shake your head. Okay. Acknowledge that they're not alone. This is what I wish I knew. So I'm going to be 59 in a week or so, and I've had a great life. But 42 years ago, I was suicidally depressed because I was so full, but I never did anything. But I was so full of emotions. And you know what I didn't know? I needed so badly for some adult in my life to say that exactly because I was such an intense thinker and feeler, it hurt now at 17, but it was going to make me the best adult. This is what our kids need to hear. And this is right there for you to begin to use that language. I also want to point you out to something else that I want every one of the kids in the Orlando area, let alone the country, can do this. This is a stress management plan. So adults can learn how to be the teacher of stress management. Under building character, there's a lot of articles and films under resilience, under health and prevention, helping teens learn to cope. But the teens themselves can build a stress management plan, right? This is written by young people for young people, but it's rooted in my work. So you know that it's rooted in what has been proven to work. This teaches them about stress. But what's more important is that when they want to, they can build their own plan. They can come back to it every week. They will write in their emails. We are not collecting data. This is so they get a PDF back of their plan. We take them through 11 steps of designing their own plan to manage stress. What are you treating like a real tiger? Why isn't this a real threat? They can choose some of my answers or they can write in their own. How do you convince yourself that this problem is temporary? What are the good things in my life? And then the most important word in cognitive reframing, the word yet. I can't do math because I can't do math yet. We take you through 11 steps, takes about 22 minutes. Every young person learns to manage their own stress. Please use this. It is free, and I believe it will do good. Take out your phones if you want now. If not, you can do this later. But what you can do is get on our list, which means that you'll get weekly newsletters. You can upgrade it to daily newsletters, which is just a parenting tip. But the reason I want you guys to have it is I want you to be able to have easily to access for all of your parents. And if you just, as if you're texting a friend, if you text, the phone number is 72345, and then you put in the word teenager, then tomorrow my assistant will put you on our list and you'll begin getting weekly newsletters. So that's again 72345, and then text the word teenager. At the end of this talk, at the end of all talks, and Kelsey, it'd be great if you could put that in chat or whatever. Like, I know that listening to me is like drinking water from a fire hose. Like, I have full insight into that, right? And I also know that you guys are school teachers. You are the people right now that more is being asked from than anybody else. You're asked to use all of your professional skills, but completely differently than you've been taught now, right? And it is so natural to listen to a guy like me and to say, how could you add something else to my plate, right? I'm already doing so much, and now you're telling me I have to love the children and I have to get involved in their behavior? And my answer to you is I'm not adding anything to your plate, guys. I'm talking about the plate. It's not a new program. It's not a new initiative. This is really the plate. The power of human relationships is the scaffolding upon which children rise. It's the scaffolding that allows children to learn. It's the scaffolding upon which education rests, is the power of human relationships. That's what we're talking about. And then I want to remind you, there is nobody other than parents that are going to affect kids' lives. If you ask young people about, as I do when I work with youth enduring homelessness, who have had the most horrible abusive lives, and I ask them how it is that they ended up still being a good person, most of them tell me about a teacher who saw them at some point in their lives. And that teacher is not someone who knew it at the time. But what they did is that they saw the kid as valued. Remember this. Why do we love? We love so that young people know that they are worthy of being loved. That's why. And when you give that to a kid who comes from a stable home, it's lovely. It's additive. When you give that to a young person who hasn't had anybody see them before the way they deserve to be seen, it is life altering, even if you don't see it right in front of you in the moment. So with that said, I'm eager to take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ginsburg. I don't know if you saw it, you probably didn't see the chat box, but everyone's like, this is the most incredible talk. He's amazing. You got to hear this more. So I'm glad that everyone that is here is getting it. They're feeling you, they're feeling the message, and we're really grateful. So I'd love to have you all. Good. I'd love everyone to be able to ask questions. So if you have a question, you can either write your name in the chat box so we can find you and unmute you, or you can put your little hand up, not your real hand, but the hand icon at the bottom so we can see you. You'll pop to the top.
Can I set a rule, Kelsey?
Yeah.
This is being recorded. So if there's something that you want to say but not have your face be shown, then put it in chat and either Kelsey or Rachel or Lori will read it without your name. Okay. I just have to make this safe for people. Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I see someone just texted me privately here. Okay. You should be good. So she's wanting to be named Ruth. Can you go ahead?
Yeah, awesome. I don't know if you guys can see me and hear me.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties, but man, I do not know where to start. Just amazing. One thing that stuck with me and that will continue to stick with me is when you said, some of the students or the kids that you work with asked you, is this going to change? And your response was, I hope not. And I've been telling my kids, yeah, I hope so. And yes, it's going to change. And I've realized that I have been, in a sense, right, robbing them of this opportunity for growth, knowing that there are so many opportunities out there for you guys to just be able to see the change that you spoke about, the change that you feel that needs to be needed. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I just thank you. I am not a teacher myself, but over in Orlando, Winter Garden, where I work with a community of young people varying from the age of 0 to 25. So just being able to have these resources, just being able to hear you, and knowing that we have to walk alongside our students and our young people so that they can be the leaders of hope, not us saying, hey, we have the hope, we have the key, and we're going to bring it. But just thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. I have no response. Thank you. Your bladder was in there.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. I see a private question, unnamed. So Dr. Ginsburg, do you have any strategies for supporting students' coping strategies when we only work with them virtually?
Yeah, so that's incredibly difficult, right? That's part of the reason that I gave you the tool, right? You working with them virtually, you can absolutely give them the stress management plan, right? And then you can maybe go over with them. That's your choice, whether or not you want to teach it. Yeah, this is a very scary time that you're only working with them virtually. And the most important thing to remember is that, and you know this, you don't need me to say this. So I apologize for articulating something you know better than me, but it's the kids who aren't showing up that need you the most, right? And so what we know is that this time of virtual training is taking away a lifeline for those kids who need human connection the most and who've only been getting it in schools. So I just want to remind you that your presence and being in their houses every day is making a world of difference, but it's the kid who isn't showing up that somehow you or the system or someone needs to call them and say, I noticed you're not there, right? Because we're going to wake up from this pandemic and we're going to see disparities widened.
Thank you, Dr. Ginsburg. I'm seeing a lot of love in the chat. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. People are saying, when's he coming back? We're going to get him back in person. I really hope we can have him back in person. Okay, I see another one. Oh, okay. What physical items such as bubbles that you mentioned would be helpful for educators in building resiliency? So kind of like those physical tools, tangible tools.
Yeah, so tangible is a better word for me to work with than physical. So what everybody needs is different categories of coping, right? So there's the thought-based categories, which are breaking problems into small pieces, avoiding problems altogether, conserving your energies. Those are things you teach through your words, right? There's also the physical things, which are learning how to exercise, learning how to relax, learning to eat well, and learning to sleep well. You teach that through your words, but also through your actions. So in gym class or taking mind breaks when you're doing virtual learning and teaching kids, okay, everybody run in place for 30 seconds and come back. And then like bringing the lesson home, because don't assume like you're doing it so they have a brain break. You're doing it so that they don't, get maddeningly bored and so that they can work out some stress. But a third grader, the lesson might not come home unless you bring it home for them. Did you notice that when you were running from a tiger and you did it for like a minute, you felt better afterwards? This is why I run every day, kids, right? Similarly with the blowing bubbles, that's an example of, teach people how to relax. And that is really, if they're older, teach them to do the belly breath and teach them how to gauge their belly breath by keeping their fingers on their belly. And it only counts if your fingers move apart. If your fingers aren't moving apart, it's not a belly breath, right? So you can teach them in that way and then bring it home. Did you notice how when you breathe deeply, it makes you relaxed? And then you can teach that through science. So similarly, the next category that kids need is to manage emotions. And managing emotions has two very different categories. One is get away from them, what I call instant vacations. This is key to drug prevention. If you don't teach kids how to get away from emotions, they will find drugs and alcohol. So you've got to give them positive ways, tangible ways to use your language of getting away from emotions. The best is teach them how to read for pleasure. When you read for pleasure, there's a lot of science behind this, guys. You're visualizing the panorama, hearing the sounds, smelling the smells, tasting the taste, most importantly, feeling the feelings. It's a true vacation because there's no room for your troubles, right? So it's got to be a book for pleasure, not a book that riles you up, not a social justice book, a book that is I can't think of the words, the teen romance, there's a genre for it. I can't think of what they're called, but something like that, that just gets you away from it. That's drug prevention. So is mindfulness. But the next category in terms of dealing with emotions is letting your feelings out, expression. And this is where you've got to be very careful because it's so easy to impose on someone how to express their feelings. So I'm a talker, a writer, and to some degree a prayer, right? But that's because I'm very verbal, right? I am completely not artistic. But there are kids who are not verbal, but who are gifted artistically. And they express themselves as well through art as I do through writing. And so we just need to work with every kid to come up with these categories. How do you let your feelings out? You know, and another example, my Covenant House kids, many of them are, if I asked them to write an essay, they would not do a good job, but they are brilliant poets, brilliant, right? So let each person have a way to avoid problems and a way to express problems.
Thank you. There's actually a lot of questions that people are sending me privately, so we only really have time for one more. I'm going to call on Samina, had her hand up, her little hand icon. So
I
Samina,
can stay an extra few minutes if people are able to. I mean, don't worry about me.
we
Okay.
appreciate your generosity with your time. Samina, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, how are you? Thank you very much for the awesome talk and for being here. I'm also a physician by education. But my question is that I went on that site and I'm doing it on the laptop, so I'm not doing it on the phone. But I didn't know where to put in that number and everything. But just by staying there, it asked me to give them the email and my email address for subscription. Is this something normal that is supposed to happen there?
Yeah, it's a pop-up. It's the same thing as if you text, but you don't have to do that. There's a little teeny X. All you have to do is press the little X and then you go on. It's a pop-up that asks you if you want to kind of be a member to get stuff, but you don't have to do that at all. You literally, upper right corner, teeny weeny X, press it, it's gone.
Perfect.
Okay, so do we have to register to get any information there, or we can just go whenever we want to and get the information?
You can go anytime you want to. The only reason I want you to register is that it enables you to get updates automatically, and that makes you more likely to share. And so that's our strategy. But you can use it anytime you want. It's absolutely free, and you do not need to give your name or anything like that if you don't want to.
Okay, good. So it means I can give it to my children and my students.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that. Some people had the same question, so that's great. And I'll try to summarize that in the email I send out tomorrow is how they can access all that good stuff. Sandy Fink was asking about one of the biggest issues that she's seeing with the students that she's working with is motivation right now. Just feeling like, how do you get students to feel motivated right now with what they're dealing with?
I have a feeling that I could learn a lot from you, especially the educators in the room, about how to keep kids motivated, but I'm going to give you kind of my doctor's perspective. And my doctor's perspective is be very careful with thinking kids are not motivated. A couple things. Number one is remember how adolescent depression presents. Adolescent depression can present with withdrawal or with rage. And adults always miss the rage, and we call kids bad instead of sad. And that's what feeds the school to prison pipeline, by the way. Know that if a kid is withdrawing, turning down, or becoming demotivated, the first thing we need to do is make sure they're not depressed. The next thing we have to remember is how many kids lie about not caring, right? So either kids on one end of the, who are like perfectionists, who pretend they don't care, kids like me who are very, very discordant, so like, I was in the gifted classrooms, but I also, if this isn't obvious to you, have like ADD. So I was always not living up to people's potential. My entire education was people telling me I wasn't living up to my potential. So I got heavily invested in pretending I didn't care, but that was a complete lie, right? Because it's much harder for an adolescent to say I care so much that it hurts and I'm unable to do this, right? So, you know, really allow kids to tell their truth. If it feels inconsistent to you that a kid is not motivated, don't believe it. Also, remember that there's all sorts of biases that kids need to endure that send really poisonous messages about who school is for and who school is not for. So just be exquisitely careful of the subject of motivation and always assume it's really there, but that kids might be playing a part rather than saying how hurt they are by lower expectations. With that said, once you've kind of gone down this list and you don't think you're dealing with these issues, this is a time that I couldn't learn online all day. Like my brain, there's no way I could have done it, right? And so we have to acknowledge that this is a lot of kids are gonna be suffering, and we need to figure out with them how to keep them engaged. And that might be a kid by kid phenomenon, right? For me, it would have been, Ken, stop sitting in the chair, go run around the block and come back in 10 minutes. Like that would have been my answer, but no one ever told me to do that. So
thank you, everybody. Well, I want to honor everyone's time, and we still want to give away your books. So people are asking, has he written any books? Yes, he has, and we're going to give 5 away. Rachel's are excited person. If you want to share the 5 winners, if you are one of the winners, if you could just put your, actually, I'm going to put my email in the chat box. So you're going to email me your address that you're comfortable with me shipping the book to. So you're going to email me that address so we can mail you the book.
Okay, so I'm Rachel Allen, and I am with the Peace and Justice Institute. I want to thank each one of you for being here tonight, and so many familiar faces, friends, and so many new faces. And I want you to know what Ken likes about Orlando is that he sees us, and he knows not only are we teachers, we are doctors, we are business leaders, we are criminal justice educators and criminal justice practitioners. We got everybody showing up for this work. And know, each one of you, that you have the power to make a difference in this community. Because I'm going to tell you, and we know it, that together we can make a resilient and trauma-sensitive community, as Dr. Ginsburg is helping us with. So we got 5 of these books. And I want y'all to know we have Reaching Teens. Now, we have not committed to this work yet as a community. We're exploring it through the network. I think a lot of us are seeing the value here. And this is something, as you're on here and representing your group, you know, if you want to come to the network and we can talk about this together, we want you to be a part of this. So here we go. I'm picking the people in my bottom left screen. Ruth, 1-1. It's you, Ruth. Okay. Here's the next. I know, it's so exciting. Shelly, I can't see your face, but you 1-1. It's you, Shelly. Ann Pimentel Care. Ann probably has this book. You're going to have to pass it on to a colleague.
Ann has one for sure.
Ann has one. Yeah. Sandy Hidalgo. Sandy Hidalgo, you have won one of these books. And Serena Mack. Serena Mack, thank you all for being here, and just give Kelsey your contact information, and we'll send this to you in the mail. Thank you, Dr. Ginsburg, for being with us again tonight.
Hey, Rachel. Rachel, can you hear me? This is Ann.
Yeah.
Hey, quickly, I do have one, so please pick someone else real quick. They can have my book.
Okay. I'm going to go to the person that just came up is Samantha Resser.
Yay, Samantha.
You won a book, Samantha. Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel, for doing that. She's really good at bringing the energy for the yay and so many other things, of course. So we really want to hear what you think about this workshop in terms of how can we continue to improve? How can we continue to bring meaningful work to this community? So please just take 1 minute to fill out this quick survey. Lori's going to put the link in the chat box. Please join me in thanking Orlando Health for their generous support of this work. They supported all 3 workshops. They were our title sponsor on the conference. So they are invested in this work. They are moving it forward in the community. So thank you to Orlando Health, our title sponsor. And if you want to be an individual that donates, we would love your support too and your investment. So we're also going to put that link in the chat box as well. And the biggest thank you is to Dr. Ginsburg. So thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the continued work that you're doing. And we really want to have you come back in person. So we hope that you'll accept that invitation when we can, travel and do all those things again. So I'll have to send you the chat because it's been incredible just to watch the love that you're getting and also the meaningful impact you're having on all of our different sectors. So thank you so much for being here.